What is up, YouTube? HPJ here, and I'm coming at you guys with part two of my decades in Yu-Gi-Oh! We are now going from 2012, well, the end of 2012, and going all the way to 2016, or the beginning of 2016, rather. So, about a good 3-4 years in between. So, 3 or 4 years in between, there wasn't much content on the channel. But there was a lot of content in terms of the stuff that I built. That was in the spans of pretty much the beginnings of the Exceed era all the way until the beginning of the Pendulum era. And the crazy thing about that whole scenario of things, because I know once the tail, I want to say, when did I get recording? I think I started recording right around Primal Origin. And I think right around Primal Origin, yeah, right around Primal Origin. And that was 2014. So for the most part, you guys have practically seen a lot of what was up during that time period. Um, and then just for the most part, everything else to follow after. Because there are a couple of decks that I can include, but I think I want to save most of those for the last tail end of the video. Because there isn't much, the last video, because there's not much in terms of 2016 to 19 in terms of just heavy stuff. But for the most part, the overall build of what was going on between then and then, then and now, um, has a lot of reflection of what was seen in the content of the channel itself. At the end of 2012, that's pretty much where I began to build variations of Gallus. And Gallus, for the most part, as we all know, Gallus OTK, FTK, was pretty much just a sigma of summoning Quaki Maroon Doom, activating Gallus' Star Beast effect to send the top card of your deck to sending the top card of your deck to the graveyard. If it was a monster, you would inflict damage to your opponent 200 times its level, and then you'd be able to special summon Gallus' Star Beast. Then Gallus would be returned to the hand as cost for the effects of Gene's ally Birdman. But Birdman's summon would be negated because of Doom being placed on the field. This was a wild combination as Gallus finally did get released in the TCG in terms of America at that time. I think in the OCG he was part of a special edition they got. We didn't receive this monster till later on, and I think you had to um, buy your Gallus of Star Beast from Europe. And I know the transition between Europe and America is very hefty in terms of cards. Especially because a lot of their cards are printed in different language, and some Yu-Gi-Oh players love the different language between European prints and American prints. But that was just pretty much the startup there. And then I did infuse it with a lot of things. I guess the first infusion, of course, is agents, mainly just a lot of the engine going into Gallus, because Gallus was really easy monster to summon. And at the time of Gallus coming to coming to North America for the TCG, that's when we did enter the Exceed format. It's still one of my favorite Exceeds from there. Happens to be Levier, the Sea Dragon, who has the ability to detach a material from itself, such as summon a level 4 or lower monster that's been banished, and summon it to the field. With a deck like Gallus Agents, you were able to summon a lot of your pieces that were banished due to effects of cards like Master Hyperion, the effects of the Chaos Engine itself. You had a very big range of monsters in terms of Gallus, because Gallus could summon anything and everything within it. The extra deck was just limitless. I think the only issue I had with Gallus was that there wasn't enough defense as it was offensive, and because of it being an FTK sort of situation, Monster Mash itself has the problem of it being nothing but monster. Even with the amount of hand traps that you put in effect mailers, maxis, stuff like that, just it gave its defense, but at the cost of, can your opponent negate what you're summoning? Can your opponent negate what you're playing? And is their deck built to deal with heavy monster? Then it is heavy spell and trap. Because at that point, we're going from Giant Trunade to Heavy. No, we're going from Heavy Storm and Trunade in the format to just Trunade being in the format, and then still doing a lot of counter traps, a lot of the hefty prices here and there. We also do have to talk about Tour Guide from the Underworld because she does make an appearance around that time. Her being released in what is that set? Extreme Victories, which was the last synchro set in terms of main story, because everyone knows the lineup of the sets is based off of the anime here when it comes to America, as well as when it's aired in Japan. So depending on the set structure there, we receive those sets later on. With this, we did receive Torai, and she was broken. She was very expensive. It was only till she got reprinted, and I've had a full set of tour guide from her. I think I still have my set of tour guides from the Underworld, actually, somewhere around here. Or I probably have like a set now. But she was the most expensive card because of the fact that that was when Exceeds were coming out. She was paired very well, of course, with Sangan before his errata. I know there's a lot of issues with Sangan then. Sangan jumped up because of the fact that his effect at the beginning of the Exceed format, when it first got noted of what the situation was with the material are not considered to be on the field. They are considered to be in a limbo state of the area where they're not in the field, but they're not in the graveyard. They're used as material for the monster that's on the field. So it was ruled at that point that they were part of the field, which made Sangan and Torgai both go up because then Sangan could trigger getting its effect to be sent from the field to the graveyard. But they later changed it to where later changed it to simplify that no, Sangan's no longer on the field and he's not being sent to the graveyard and he's material now of that monster. So that meant that he was no longer in the graveyard. It was a pretty weird, strange 2 months for Zangan and Torgai. But Torgai outright just became more so the set that it was. In the same instance, that's where I moved from Gallus itself to Chaos itself, actually. Combining both light and dark. That was also the time release of Blackluster Soldier, the Envoy of the Beginning, in his unbanning on the TCG list. Which shocked everybody. Actually, no, that was TCG and OCG where BLS got unbanned. It was one of the craziest things because no one ever thought BLS would get unbanned. A lot of people probably questioning, well, why would you guys think BLS would be unbanned? His effect isn't that broken. Well, I mean, during the time of the period in which he came back, that was a very crucial period because, well, Chaos Sorcerer was at, I think, one. Chaos Sorcerer just came back. He had less stipulation. Well, BLS had less stipulations on his summon than Chaos Sorcerer did. And at that point, they were reprinting a lot of cards to have problem solving text, which was pretty much if your text needed to be updated, it was being updated, or it was being more simplified to where rulings could be a lot more easier on the card. Look at cards such as Red Moon Baby going to was it Vampire Baby, the White Kids 1 and 2 are actually were originally called Othello Heroes 1 and 2. So the transition of a lot of cards from back and forth was going around, and that's then ultimately what became a Blackluster Soldier was he came back, and he came back with a vengeance, and he was still at one for a pretty good time. I think now he's at three, just because of the fact like nothing really broke BLS. BLS at the time was broken because of where the game was at that current time. Throughout the span of 2005 to 2012, it was a period of okay, well, we've reprinted chaos stuff, we've reprinted a mixture of light and dark. Why don't we bring back one of you know that time period's most broken monsters? Chaos Emperor Dragon couldn't come off at that time. He was still completely broken, and at that point, he was on. They banned BLS, and BLS cards skyrocketed like hell. Like, no one could imagine. And Blackluster Soldier was getting unbanned, and Chaos was running crazy with this monster. I mean, I've seen Lightsworn, I've seen zombies, I've seen just variations of Light and Dark, and not to mention agents, because agent decks were all over the place. Especially when your board was left with BLS, Master Hyperion, Gachi, Trishula, and Archlord Christia. So imagine having to break through some boards like that. Excuse me, like that. Because I use this monster completely. I still have one too. So just a ride of chaos that was pretty much from 2012, the end of 2012 to towards the end of 2013. So yeah, that's Agent of Venus, Agent of Creation Venus, Agent of Earth, Agent of Mystery Earth, uh, Gen X Ally Birdman, Gallus of Star Beast, Quacky Miru Doom, Tour Guide from the Underworld, Sangan, Chaos Sorcerer, Black Luster Soldier, Armed Beginning, and Levier, the Sea Dragon. So we move on to where I like to call it the second half of the Zexal series, and this is where all the quote elemental sets were coming in. We started with Return of the Duelist, I believe, or Rise of the Duelist. No, Return of the Duelist, and that's where we were introduced to Madolche. Now this was a deck that I didn't really think I'd have much fun with. Um, Still to this day, it gets a lot of it's still around, surprisingly enough, because it's one of the few decks that has a way of bringing a lot of its monsters to the board. It has its own unique gimmick, and it's so many things you can splash into it that it doesn't hurt it because of how much support the deck has that can manipulate its own downsides to itself. When it first started off, one of the biggest downsides was Madolche Princess. And that was just due to the fact that she was the only high level monster in the archetype, but she had one of the most broken setups for her effect. Was even if she lost the battle, whatever she battled with, she can destroy a card on your opponent's side of the field. And she got over Stardust Dragon, which was one of the big shockers because it's rare in occasion that any card in the game could get over a series of particular cards, and she got over one of the bigger ones. She was not alone at the time because at that time we had Madolche Magellan who was able to be Stratos. She wasn't directly Stratos because she couldn't do it when she's summon, but when she's normal summon, you can add a Madolche monster from your deck to your hand. You had Madolche Mufilo who had the ability to special summon a Madolche monster from your hand when he was normal summon. So he was pretty much their marauding captain. It wasn't until later sets where we got stuff like Munson Gelato, who's able to search a spell or trap card from your deck with Madolche in its name, but you had to control a beast type Madolche monster in order for the effect to to activate. Um, we later on got Hoot Cake, who was able to special summon monsters from the deck by banishing monsters in the graveyard. And then it took even longer, but we did receive cards like Angeli, the first of the main deck monsters to be a fairy type Madolche monster. And her ability was that she contributed herself to special summon a Madolche monster from your deck. That monster couldn't be destroyed in battle and while it was on the field, and it was returned back to the deck during the end phase of the next of your opponent's turn. So the fact that she was not only a level 4 fairy Madolche monster, but she was also a Lone Fire Blossom. Now a lot of people are probably saying, okay, well what would that account to? Well, Madolche's ended up getting a spell card called Madolche Ticket. Its effect is that when a Madolche monster uh, or Madolche cards will be sent back to the deck, they're sent back uh, sent to the hand, back from the hand or main deck. You were able to special summon. You're able to add a Madolche monster to your hand. But if you had a fairy Madolche monster already on the field, you were able to special summon that monster. And at the time when it was released, the only monster was the queen herself, Tiara Misu, who was also featured on the card's effect. But because she was an extra deck, you wanted a lot of your special summons to start popping off. Cards like Double Summon, Chain Summon were really going on, not just because of Dolce, but Gear Gil at the time as well. And just the big fluctuation of a lot of these cards started to pop because, well, a lot of the strategies themselves. The deck itself overall expanded because it had a field spell, Madolche Chateau, which was just a giant pot of avarice for the archetypes. And every Madolche monster in the graveyard back to the deck. Every time Madolche monsters would be sent to the graveyard, you have the option to send them back. They would go back to the hand. Sent to the deck, they would go back to the hand instead. So then you can replay, you can interact a lot more with the combinations that you had in terms of Mifilo, Hoot Cake, and Jelly, Messenger Gelato, like a lot of that stuff. Um, and then I think the outright at that end was just Madolche Palooza. So to summon as many Madolche monsters from your hand as possible. The strategy of Madolche became not only just massive summon, but a massive creativity. And then Saber Invoker, Wind Up Zen mains, these Solitary Soldier Knight of Silver Mountain. I think that's what his name was. That's his OCG name, but Soldier of Silver Mountain. That's, I think, his CCG name. Which was not bad either. Fairy King Alverdetch, because it was nothing but an Earth type deck. You had the resources of Earth type monsters. Like, you had a lot of good stuff going on. I even remember some people were bold enough to even put in because of all the exceed summoning, people were putting in cards like well we had the hand traps that were in there, but they were easy fodder. Um, you just had a lot of good reserves. You had a lot of good things you can easily put back in the deck. You had Madolche lesson to send stuff back too, in case that never became a problem. Because they did synchro, they did take advantage of E-Telly, they had Neteria Beast, they had Neteria Barkion. But the rank 4, rank 3 game with this archetype was strong. Since we are going to talk about their strong setup, we got to talk about their queen, Tiara Misu. She was the one that broke the setup and broke the mold because originally monsters who were able to send stuff back to the deck had to have proper targets in the graveyard. Well, for her, if she dropped material, her material would count as being able to be sent back to the graveyard. I mean, back from the graveyard to the deck or to the hand. So she pretty much broke that setup to where, cards like Stone Emerald had to be more specific on what their effects were. Pot of Avarice in the same sense. So DD Crow had went up because DD Crow was a good counter um, to Tiara Misu's effect, or to the Madolche lineup overall. But for the most part, because of how she was worded. That's how her ruling was set to be. And then they never really changed it. I think they more so clarified it before Hoot Cake came out, which was great. Because Hoot Cake came out in Lord of Tachyon Galaxy. And at that point, that deck was being built, Harpies were being built, and then dragons were surfacing. So you had a lot of things. Not to mention at that time, we still had Fire Fist going around, which were getting pluses. We had the biggest plus, of course, for the Mermails, because Mermails came out around the time the Madolche started getting the rest of their stuff. So water, earth, wind, um, fire. You had Dark and Light coming out later on in Judgment of Light, because that was a combination. Judgment of Light and Shadow Specters. So you had the range, you had the spread out. And Jelly didn't come to Crossover Souls, if I'm not mistaken. And we didn't get Princessa, the second main deck Fairy Madolche monster, till I forget what the set was. It was earlier this year, but um, God, it was just so much stuff going on with Madolche, and Madolche is just really, really flexible. Has really good setup. They did receive their own Link monster, Madolche Fresis Tart, who protects their spells and trap cards from being targeted and destroyed by card effects. And she also had a recovery effect to herself. So it's just a nice spread of things. You also had a very good defensive monster in the form of Madolche Teacher, Glass Souffle, and her ability to protect stuff on the field. And then you had Madolche Pudding Says Chuckla a la mode, who's pretty much just here to be a cute beat stick. That's pretty much what she is. And she's a searcher as well. But for the most part, I still enjoy Madolche. I do have a couple of things with Madolche. If I ever go back to Madolche, I'll probably have some fun with it. Madolche Pudding Cess, Madolche Messengelato, Madolche Marlin Magellan, and Jelly, Pudding Cessa, Hoot Cake, Mufilo, Ticket, Chateau, Lesson, Palooza, Queen, Chocolate a la Mode, Teacher, Glass Souffle, and Sis Tart. Alright, so we move on from Adulche and we go on to, because I really didn't build much between after Abyss Rising and forming up for Harpies from Cosmo Blazer. I think that was, not Cosmo Blazer. Was it Cosmo Blazer? Yeah, it was Cosmo Blazer. And then we went on to Lord of Tachyon Galaxy. Don't quote me on that because I'm still trying to figure out some stuff there. Okay, so the reason why Harpies are not included because they're getting their own separate video. Spoilers. But we can talk about dragons. And the good period of time I ran dragons because dragons at that time had just gotten the dragon rulers. And this was when the game itself broke on both ends because you had $10 rares, $3. You had like really cheap commons, but you had $4 or $5 rares. You had the introduction to really good level 7s because not only did we include Big Eye, but we're including Mega Vanabeast Draco Sack and Master of Blades, number 74 Master of Blades. Master of Blades came out, I think, in Number Hunter, the first set of Number Hunters at that time. and he was pretty much everyone's answer to saying we can't afford we can't afford Draco Sack, we can't afford Big Eye, but let's get some cards that can counter them, and that was pretty much what Master of Blades was. Um, Still a relatively decent enough card. Anything that would target him, he can negate the effect and then destroy a card on the field, and at times that protects a lot of monsters, that protects a lot of setup. Sadly enough, well, the crazy thing about dragons was that dragons just had so much going for them because the dragon rulers themselves were monsters based off of each of the attributes: water, fire, wind, and earth. So you could incorporate them into any various deck that did have them as an attribute or a type. You had dragons themselves you can splash in because you can splash in Dragoonity tuners, you can splash in the Flame Veil tuner. I even seen people splash in plants. Yes, because there was a manipulation of graveyard or sending stuff to the graveyard because you had Tempest, you had Tidal, Redox, and Blaster, who sadly can't make their appearance here because, well, I can't get it's something weird with the program. But yeah, the Dragon Rulers themselves overall built what they were in the format. They won worlds and then they got hit completely. This is when the TCG and the OCG split their list. At the end of the summer of 2013, the OCG and the TCG split their list, meaning that the OCG had their own list, the TCG had their own list. Most of the stuff that was on the OCG list was not on the TCG list, meaning cards were getting unbanned on TCG and the OCG side, and the TCG had the heaviest hits on their end, with the exception of the Dragon Rulers, who all ended up at one, and all the babies ended up being banned. Then the early spring, late winter of 2014, they switched the Dragon Rulers for the babies, and the babies were off the list, but the Dragons were on there, and I think a couple of more cards ended up on there as well. But the Dragon format itself was just crazy because of how much of a span it had. Tuners it had access to because of Tempest floating, because they had the access of the dragons themselves who were able to float, or the baby dragons who were able to summon them to allow their ability to float. You had cards like the Breed Dragon, Lone Fire Blossom, and you just had a great range of cards that just flexed out what the deck itself could do. So, in apprentices, we do have Tempest, the Dragon Ruler of Storms. We have Lightning, we have Burner, we have Steam, and we have Reactor. And in sequence to Tidal, Redox, and Blaster. We have Sacred Sword of Seven Stars, which also came out in um, Lord of Tachyon Galaxy. Debris Dragon, Glow Up Bulb, Glow Up Bulb Spore. Sadly, no Dandy because Dandy's banned as well. Flame Veil Guard, Dragoonity Phalanx, Dragoonity Dark Spear, Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, Dragon's Ravine, Dragoonity Vajrayana, Makeup Venomy's Draco Sack, number 74, Master Blades, number 11, Big Eye. So we move on from them. We go to Primal Origin, which at that point I was just still strictly Harpie and Dolce. We can now go on to, was it Duelist Alliance, and we can talk about Shaddoll. And this was a deck that I didn't start building till later on. This was right when the Pendulum format started. And the crazy thing about Shaddoll is fusion based. They didn't get no Pendulums till literally the Zephyra came, and the Zephyra didn't come till literally a year after. Yeah, a year and a half after. A year after. This was, no, just a couple of months after. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of something else. Or I could be. I'm not sure. No. I'm right. A couple of months after, because that was Secret Forces, and that was it Secret Forces. I'm trying to remember the side sets because that's when the set started having the three of decks in one, and most of them weren't too bad in the beginning. Then when they started getting broken, then that's when they started to have to, okay, guys, we got to tune this down. But Shaddoll itself, fusion, dark attribute, spellcaster type deck. But the fusion monsters are arranged between all six attributes, similar to heroes. And they were part of the reason why Super Poly also got banned, because at that point it was just a crazy thing with fusions, because fusions were taking advantage of super polarization, because Shaddolls were taking advantage of super polarization. I think we still had a lot of reserved hero stuff because they were still struggling with Bubble Beat being completely dead because no Stratos. there really just was like a whole aspiration of fusion because how good Shadal was. It wasn't Shadal, you're playing Klee. And Klee and Shadal had their own ways till Shiginaga came out. And Shiginaga broke the setup there because Shiginaga's like, well, I'm going to sit in my defensive wall and I'm going to take your untouchable towers and then fuse it with my random Shadal monster. And then bam, here comes Shadal Shiginaga sitting in defense position. Like, hello. That's pretty much what she did. And it was her, it was Tellarknights, and their whole interaction with Light. This was just so much coming out of something that was supposed to be based for Pendulum, but the only Pendulum at that time was Klee and a little bit of Performer Power, but Performer Power didn't pop off till Crossover Souls. Oh no, after Crossover Souls, and that's simply just due to the fact that the TCG just didn't have enough stuff because um, Duelist Alliance, Next Challenger, Secrets of Eternity, like the whole lineup for the beginning of the Pendulum era didn't really pop off till we got till Crossover Souls. No, to after Crossover Souls till we got to Clash of Rebellion. So at that period of time, Shadal still now is still a really good deck. They just got the structure deck. We're getting the structure deck in February of 2020, and then we're going to be getting the new rule change. So a lot of people are really expecting Shadal to shine. Not to mention um, when the next Duelist pack, Legendary Duelist pack comes out, that's going to be the one focused on the main protagonist, and they'll have monsters, literally just a whole bunch of spellcaster monsters as based off of them. But we're getting a lot of support there, and we're going to see a lot of variations of Shadal at that period of time as well. Because I'll be playing Shadal as well. We're going to see a lot of variation of things. But of course, I'll read off the Shadal monsters of that, and that is Shadal Beast, Shadal Skalmata, Shadal Dragons, Shadal Hedgehog, Falco, Shadal Fusion, El Shadal Fusion, Shadal Core, Shadal Winda, Shadal Construct, and Shadal Shiginaga. Um, for the most part of that. Also, to note about the Shadals, because I'm not going anywhere for them for a minute, is they were flip effect monsters. They had their own flip effects, but they also had their own corresponding effects when they're sent to the graveyard. And some could be beneficial, some couldn't. And then we also have to look at Shadal Fusion, which was pretty much the first of the fusion cards in the game to ever say if your opponent has a monster from the extra deck, you can special summon a monster. You can fusion summon a monster from your extra deck using monsters from your main deck if they had that special summon monster on the field. So this was the one that broke the mold for a lot of future cards to have that same situation. I'm looking at Lunalights and Lunalite Fusion. And then, of course, their quick play variation of their fusion setup for El Shadal Fusion, because I think at that point, these were supposed to be monsters that were still going from the dual terminal, but at the time, dual terminal and the TCG had discontinued, and just imagine what these cards would have looked like and how much they would have been. Also, to mention Shadal Core, because I did forget him. And then we move on to Clash of Rebellion, and I believe we're at 2015, I believe, still. Yep, because we're here with Cosmo. And Cosmo was an archetype that was a combination of both The Wizard of Oz and Star Wars, two very popular um, movies here in the West. Not so much yeah, here in the West, but not in the East. The crazy thing about Cosmo was their abilities. The Cosmo was split into two different sets. You had the uh, regular normal monsters, which were the pilots. These were all psychic types. And then you have the machines, and they're all machine type. The pilots have the ability to banish themselves from the field, to special summon a monster from their hand whose level is one higher or more than their own, and place them on the field. They had their own unique abilities, but one of my favorites was Cosmo Farm Girl because she had the ability to inflict when she inflicted damage to your opponent, you were able to pay 500 of your life points, search your deck for a Cosmo card, and add it to your hand. Still in that same battle phase, you can swap her out for Cosmo Forerunner, who during each of your standby phases gained 1,000, give you 1,000 life points each turn. While this monster was on the field, your opponent can target it. That's also the big thing about the big ships, is that they can be targeted by your opponent's card effects. And if they were ever destroyed, a battle or card effect is sent to the graveyard, you can banish them from the graveyard and then put another Cosmo monster whose level was lower than theirs, or more, to the field. So you can have Forerunner come out and then have him get destroyed, and then summon someone like who was it? Someone like a Flip Rider who could destroy spells and traps when he's normal special summon. Or you can go get another Farm Girl and then she can tag out during the next turn for another monster. Then when we got the big boy, Dark Destroyer, that's where the game we run. Cosmo Dark Destroyer was the only monster of the Cosmo archetype to ever be limited. He was recently unlimited as about 2 or 3 formats ago, just because of the fact that the real big issue was E-Telly and E-Telly's ability to spam the deck. The deck had a lot of range because it could go Chaos with BLS and Chaos Sorcerer and stuff like that. It had the range to go Machine using cards like Cyber Dragon and Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon. Like, you should have seen the mirror matches. The mirror matches is crazy. And the funny thing was, they have no extra deck monsters. They don't, none at all. It's just pretty much swap in, swap out, go for little puny monsters to big beater machines. And trust me, they took full advantage of everything that was based off of Star Wars and the Wizard of Oz, because they even have a Dark Planet. And Dark Planet's based off of the what is that thing? The Death Star. So for the Cosmo monsters, we have Cosmo Dark Destroyer, Cosmo Forerunner, Cosmo Farm Girl, and Cosmo Town, the field spell. So that is pretty much the span of what, 2-3 years there, or 3-4 years there, because we can even rush into a bit of 2016. But 2016 to 2019 is going to be a nice video for you guys, and I hope you guys do enjoy this one. Uh, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll have some more videos up for you guys. And thank you guys so much for watching. HPJ, signing out. Take care.